This is martial arts and Sun Tzu in Marvel movies. Here we have an example of a good fight scene. The choreography is tight, the actions are quick and fluid, and the camera work allows us to follow every move in the scene. In addition, Black Panther fights in a style that is distinctly his. In fact, even if you didn't know the Black Panther's secret identity, you can still tell that he is the same character just by his fighting style even when he is not wearing his suit. His style is quick, wild, and agile, utilizing an open hand when striking, as well as a good mixture of mid to high level kicks. In addition, Black Panther is normally at an advantage when fighting from a low position, as evidenced by this clip. Another well-rounded Marvel martial artist is Daredevil. Daredevil's fighting style is mad and feral. He often gets low in fighting and almost always clearly and purposely breaks the bones of his opponents. He fights with this sort of desperation that could remind one of Gollum trying to take the ring from Frodo. In an almost fearless way, he fights with reckless abandon, taking high amounts of abuse in order to deliver even more damage in return. This fighting style is an interesting mix of boxing and acrobatics, and it stays consistent throughout the Daredevil series. Ground and pounds, pummelings, and broken bones are what Matthew Murdock delivers, from episode 1 of season 1 to the final episode of season 2. Daredevil's fighting style is part of what identifies him as Daredevil. On the other hand, Danny Rand, the Iron Fist, could not have a more vanilla and unmemorable fighting style. Don't get me wrong, Danny Rand fights with skill and fluidity, but there is just nothing about the way he fights that distinguishes him from any of the other hundreds of martial artist actors. Ip Man fights with the air of nobility that is befitting of a social status. The Punisher punishes with deadly force and fury, a violent, terrifying, bloody, animalistic rage. But Iron Fist doesn't fight like a man who was raised by Shaolin monks for 15 years. In fact, most of the characters in Iron Fist fight like your typical karate black belt who got really good at little more than the basics. To take it further, some of the fights look more like sober bar scuffles rather than deadly combat. It is because of these reasons that I believe the combat in Marvel's Iron Fist could do with a fair bit of improvement. But not all fighting styles need to be skillful in order to be memorable. In Luke Cage, the fighting is very non-kinetic. The two fighting parties normally don't touch one another unless it is to deliver an attack that lands. The fighters operate in a hands-off way, relying heavily on throws, shoves, and haymakers that send enemies flying. Compare this to the Raid movies, where the fighting is extremely kinetic. In these movies, the two fighting parties are almost always in contact with one another. They utilize a wide variety of short, quick attacks and have to land many solid hits in order to win. In Luke Cage, groups of enemies fall like bowling pins, and goons stay down after one hit, no matter how poorly placed it is. Normally this would come off as lazy choreography, however, Luke Cage has super strength, and doesn't need to hit most of his opponents more than once in order to keep them down. This brings us to my next point. What is the appropriate fighting style for a character to have? I already used Luke Cage as an example of a good choice of fighting style. He is massive, indestructible, and doesn't need to be agile and skillful in order to win. Black Widow is another good example. She is small and not that physically strong, but her style works around these setbacks and even builds on them as strengths. Her small frame allows her to use opponents as solid footing as she climbs and swings around them to build momentum in order to take them down. For her lack of strength, she has flexibility and a wide variety of weapons and tools that she can use to get out of a bind in case things get too hairy. And if the going gets really tough, Black Widow has been known to fight dirty. Who then, in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, fights with a style that is completely out of character? My answer is Drax from Guardians of the Galaxy. Drax is a character that has always made me scratch my head in confusion. He is big and muscular, trained in a warrior culture, and he often uses brute force and powerful blows to defeat his opponents. However, more often than not, Drax fights with his twin daggers in a way that is reminiscent of Legolas from Lord of the Rings. The usage of twin daggers is normally something reserved for rogues, assassins, that type of character. But Drax, the big, macho, muscle-bound alien warrior, is using them. This sort of contrast takes me off balance whenever I see it. Something just seems wrong in the way he swings those short blades around, as if he were a woodland elf or the Prince of Persia. Sure, he's good at it, but from a cinematic perspective, it's kind of lame. From the clips here presented, it should be clear that Drax, as a fighter, looks much better when dispatching his foes with his bare hands. When using his bare hands, he's in his element, doing what his character design was made to, and it's absolutely wonderful.
Finger to the throat means death.
Since we're on the topic of weapon choice, let's talk more about the use of weapons in Marvel movies. Almost every fighting style includes weaponry on some level. In my personal experience with Korean Tang Soo Do, I learned how to use the bow staff. Indonesian and Filipino martial artists learned to make wide use of the karambit knife. And Western martial arts are best known for the longsword. But how do we distinguish good weapon use from bad weapon use? In all honesty, it just depends on what you're going for. The movie Hero contains some of the most ridiculous and overperformed weapon fights I have ever seen in my life. But for this movie, the ridiculous nature of the fights meshes well with the overall artistic theme of Hero. It is like a painting, and the stakes don't need to be high in order for anyone to appreciate its aesthetic prowess. Realism doesn't matter in Hero, because Hero, in a sense, doesn't take place in the real world. It is far deeper in the world of concepts and ideas rather than the world of physics and rationality. When it comes to weaponry fitting the theme of a movie, Hero hits the nail on the head. But where Hero's dance-like sword fights can remind one of a watercolor painting, Daredevil instead brings to mind Hieronymus Bosch's medieval depictions of hell. Daredevil leans more in favor of the survival horror genre. Therefore, the weapons are not primarily on screen to look pretty. The weapons are there to maim and kill. Instead of beautifully crafted swords and spears, Daredevil prefers chains, crowbars, guns, and baseball bats. Fighting like hell is an accurate way to describe the way in which all of the characters in Daredevil use their weapons. The stakes are high, the blood is pumping, and my bowl of popcorn is probably spilled all over the carpet. This is how this particular show wants the viewers to feel, and it does a damn good job of it. Good action scenes are not easy to pull off in movies. It takes time to write and learn choreography, the actors might get hurt, and the camera work needed to capture a fast-paced fight is way harder than normal. And there's a huge viewer base of fanboys and fangirls out there who are just like me, never getting sick of a good fight scene. We can be critical at times, but we love the martial arts genre anyway. Because of this, I give my sincerest thanks to the hardworking men and women who have devoted so much of their time and effort in order to entertain all of us.